What's going on, guys? It is your boy Johnny Stacks, and welcome back to another brand new video. In today's video, I'm going to be actually talking about Gears of War Judgment and why I love Gears of War Judgment and why I also think Gears Judgment is very underrated. Gears of War Judgment was released on March 2013, 2 years after the release of Gears of War 3, which came out in 2011. After seeing how good Gears of War 3 was back in 2011, people had very high hopes for the sequel for Gears of War 3. But instead of getting a sequel to Gears of War 3 called Gears of War 4, we got a prequel, which was Gears of War Judgment. Gears of War Judgment takes place before the events of Gears of War 1, which is why I'm so excited for Gears of War E-Day, because E-Day takes us before Gears of War Judgment all the way to the beginning of the Locust War on Emergence Day. Judgment wasn't received very well by the Gears of War fans. Even I didn't like Gears of War Judgment when it released all those years ago, but after playing all these other Gears games like Gears of War 4, Gears of War UE, Gears of War 5, Gears of War Reloaded, I'm starting to think, now looking back at Gears of War Judgment, that Gears of War Judgment wasn't actually a bad game. I think it was very fun. I think the campaign was also very good, and I think just overall as a game was a very fun experience. In this video, I'm going to give you guys a list of things as to why I think Gears of War Judgment was actually pretty good and very underrated, and why I think it's better, to be honest, than Gears of War Reloaded and Gears of War 5. This video is going to include weapons, maps, the customization, the multiplayer game modes, the campaign, everything. So I hope you guys do enjoy. First, I want to talk about the game modes. I think the game modes is what makes a Gears of War game amazing and fun. Not just for Gears of War, other franchises that have multiplayer. I think having good game modes is what keeps the game alive, and it keeps the game fun for the players. I want to start off with, you guys probably already know, I want to start off with Free for All. Gears Judgment was the first Gears game to have Free for All in it, and as you can clearly tell, a lot of people loved Free for All in Gears of War Judgment, to the point that they begged the Coalition to bring it in Gears UE, in Gears 4, and then eventually they decided to put it in Gears of War 5. This game mode goes so well with the franchise of Gears of War as a whole, because Gears of War is one of those games where if you have very good teamwork, you're most likely going to win the match. But you know, there's those games where you have terrible teammates and you lose the match because of your teammates, and you can't really do anything but just perform very well on your level, which is why Free for All is so good. A lot of Gears of War players are really good that they don't need teammates to actually win the match, and that's where Free for All comes in. Free for All is also very good because, again, you don't need to rely on teammates. For example, if you lose a King of the Hill match on Gears of War and you're playing very well, that's probably because of your team. Your team is not playing the objective, which is why you guys lose the match. But because in Free for All, there is no objective, all you gotta do is get kills. If you lose the match, then it's on you. You have nobody else to blame, so it's literally all on you. And I think it's just a better game mode overall in terms of just like having fun, making content, and being a little bit sweaty. From my experience, I hated Gears of War 5 when it first came out. I stopped playing it like the second week of it being released because I just thought it was very boring compared to Gears of War 4 when it was released. But after like a couple months or so, they released Free for All in Gears of War 5, and I had so much fun playing that game mode. I loved it. The first version of Gears of War 5 Free for All was like 14 players, and they had like specific maps for the game mode, and that was it. Everyone got to spawn in with a shotgun, a lancer, a pistol, all that stuff. But now the new version of the game mode is 8 players on all the maps, not just the Free for All maps, and you can only spawn in with the shotgun. I think Gears of War Reloaded would have been great if they had Free for All. I think a lot of the game modes in Reloaded are very boring, very lackluster. You know, the only thing that I play is TDM, King of the Hill, or, you know, competitive execution. Apart from those three, like, the game is kind of just dead. And even King of the Hill is starting to become very boring. So if it had a free-for-all game mode, I feel like it would have been clean to have on Gears of War Reloaded, especially with the movement and everything. I feel like it would have been so good. As I said earlier, I think a game mode is what makes a Gears of War game very fun and exciting. Like, I can literally tell you a Gears game, and I can literally remember that Gears of War game because of a specific game mode. For example, Gears of War 2, I think of Horde mode. Gears of War 3, I think of Beast mode. Gears of War Judgment, I think of Overrun. Gears of War 4, I think of King of the Hill, because King of the Hill on Gears of War 4 was very good and very sweaty. But when I think about Gears of War 5, I mostly just think about like King of the Hill, maybe Control. But when it comes to Reloaded, I don't think about any game mode because there's barely any. There's a lot, but they're not good game modes, is what I'm trying to say. But anyways, that was the game modes for Gears of War Judgment. Now I want to talk about another game mode that I think was great for Gears of War Judgment. I think you guys know the game mode. I might not have to say it, but I think Overrun, not just in Gears of War Judgment, but I think Overrun overall is probably one of the best game modes that Gears of War has ever created. Like, ever. And I'm being serious about that. Like, say what you want about Gears of War Judgment and how it's hated by the community, but it literally brought us one of the best game modes ever in Gears of War. Free for all, Overrun. Like, it's probably bad compared to, like, the original trilogy, but it gave us so many good game modes that we literally took it for granted. If you do not know what Overrun is in Gears of War Judgment, it is basically a mixture of Beast Mode and Horde Mode combined. If you do not know what Beast Mode is, Beast Mode was first introduced in Gears of War 3 back in 2011, and Beast Mode is actually also one of the best game modes that Gears of War has ever had, to the point that they literally need to bring it back for future games. Beast Mode is when you play as the Locust this time, and you have to survive 12 waves and attack the Cog. That's basically what Beast Mode is. You get to pick different characters like a Locust drone, a Savage drone, a Grenadier, a Berserker, you know, a Boomer, all that stuff, right? That's how Beast Mode basically works. Horde Mode is basically the opposite of Beast Mode. Horde Mode is when you play as the Cog, and now you have to defend against the Locust. I think it's like 50 waves in each Gears of War game, something like that. But yeah, that's basically what Overrun is, a mixture of Beast Mode and Horde Mode. In Overrun, you get to play as the Locust and the Cog. The Cog's job in Overrun is to basically protect the generator from the Locust. After the generator has been destroyed or the Cog has successfully defended the generator, then you get to play as the Locust, and then your job as a Locust character is to destroy the generator. One thing that Overrun did that Horde Mode or Beast Mode didn't do is now they give you abilities and they give you classes. Now, I'm not talking about the classes and the abilities that the newer Gears of War games have. Like Gears of War 5, you have so many different abilities for Horde Mode that it's just insane. So many different classes, it's just too much at this point. But Overrun only gave you 4 classes with 4 abilities. So when you play as Baird, you have an engineer gun that can repair the traps for your team. When you play as Coltrane, you basically have an ability that when you throw it on the floor, it gives ammo to your teammates. When you play as Sophia, her ability is Medic. She basically heals her teammates if they're almost dead, or if they're on the ground, it automatically picks them up because she threw a grenade on the floor. Paddock has Scout, which is basically him having 2 sniper rifles and a grenade that when he throws it, he can see where the enemies are through the walls. Same thing happens when you play as the Locust. When you're playing as the Locust, as you can see on screen, the player is playing as a Grenadier. The Grenadier has the ability to throw a grenade. When you play as the Cantus ability is to heal, nearby teammates and scream as well. When you're playing as a Wretch, the Wretch can also has an ability where he can scream and everything, right? So as you can see, when you're playing as the Cog and the Locust, so many different abilities and so many different classes that you can do to attack or help your team that it's just very, very strategic compared to what we have nowadays in Gears of War 5 with Horde Mode. I think a game mode like Overrun in Gears of War E-Day or in the future Gears of War games would be so good and so fun because we have so much more characters in the Gears of War franchise compared to how we did back in 2013. Nowadays, there's so many different characters for Cog and Locust, and we even have a Swarm side, so I can't even imagine what we can do. I feel like the Coalition could do a 20 versus 20 versus 20, where we can have 120s play as the Locust, the other 20 play as the Cog, and the other 20 play as the Swarm, and just have a whole battle on a map playing as all these different people. I think it would be sick. Overrun, again, is one of those game modes where you're not going to see sweaty players. You're just going to have some fun and chill, play as the Cog, play as the Locust, and just have fun. And I feel like that's what's missing since the last couple Gears of War games. It's not as fun as how it used to be. The final game mode that I want to talk about for Gears of War Judgment is Domination. Now, I think Gears of War Judgment was heavily inspired by the Call of Duty franchise for a lot of reasons. First, I want to talk about the game modes. It had Free Fall, Domination. I think those 2 game modes are heavily inspired by Call of Duty, but I also want to talk about the controls. The controls in Gears of War Judgment are literally just like Call of Duty. You have to press Y to switch your weapon, just like in Call of Duty. You have to press your left bumper so you can throw your grenade just like Call of Duty, and you can jump off buildings in Gears of War Judgment just like Call of Duty. I don't know, I feel like it was very, very inspired by Call of Duty. I also think the company People Can Fly, I think they were a big part as to why Gears of War Judgment turned out to be very fun. I heard that People Can Fly are coming back to work on Gears of War E-Day with the Coalition, so I really hope they make Gears of War E-Day very fun, just like how they made Gears of War Judgment with Epic Games very, very fun. Domination in Gears of War Judgment is basically the same as domination in Call of Duty. You have an A, B. I don't know if you have a C. I think it's just A and B in Gears of War Judgment, but you have an objective A and an objective B, and you have a score limit. As you can see on screen, the score limit is 250, and yeah, it's basically the same thing as domination in Call of Duty. The reason why I want to talk about domination is because we never had a game mode like domination in Gears of War. Yes, we had objective game modes in Gears of War in the past that were kind of like domination. As you guys know, King of the Hill was in Gears of War 2 and in Gears of War 3. But again, domination is not just one objective, it's multiple objectives, which is very good for Gears of War because you can have half of the team be on one side of the map, you know, protecting A side, and then you have the other team on the other side of the map protecting B side. So it really separates everyone, and it gives everyone, again, a strategy to actually win in this match. The reason why I also love domination is because they weren't afraid of doing something new. I think a lot of games nowadays are definitely afraid on trying something new for the franchise. But again, Gears of War Judgment said, fuck that. We're doing some new stuff. And in my opinion, I think it works. I think Free For All works. I think Domination works. I think Overrun works. I think all these game modes are amazing for Gears of War Judgment. Domination in Gears of War Judgment kind of reminds me of Escalation from Gears of War 4 and Gears of War 5. Escalation is basically just 3 objectives in one match. I think you have to play like 7 rounds, or I think you have to win 7 rounds in Escalation, and it kind of reminds me of Domination, right? Escalation is kind of like an upgraded version of Domination, which is great. As you can see, they pick a game mode and they upgrade it in the next Gears of War game. That's awesome. I really hope to see one of these game modes for future Gears games. I said that Domination was going to be the last game mode that I talk about, but I lied. I actually have another game mode that I almost forgot. Survival mode. Survival mode is basically Horde mode, but they call it survival mode, and it has a little bit of a difference between Horde mode, like in Gears of War 3 or in Gears of War 2. So, just like Horde mode in Gears of War 2 and in Gears of War 3, you play as the COG and you have to defend yourself against the Locust. One difference in survival mode that's not in Horde mode is in survival mode, you only have to pass 10 waves, which in Gears of War 3 and 2 for Horde mode, you have to, I think, do like 50 waves or something like that. So that's one difference between both game modes. But survival mode is basically as well just like Overrun, where if you're playing as the COG, you can choose between 4 classes and 4 abilities. The gameplay on screen right now, the player is playing as Baird. As I said earlier in the video, Baird has the ability to have an engineer type of gun, which gets to repair the traps that he has set up against the Locust. One reason why I picked this game mode specifically is because I remember playing this game mode on the hardest difficulty, which is Insane, and it took me so long to actually beat all 10 waves on Insane. Like, it's actually difficult when you think about it. You guys are probably thinking, oh, survival mode is basically just Horde mode, just very, very shorter compared to the Horde mode in Gears of War 2 and 3, and it basically brings in the elements of Overrun into survival mode. But that's why I love it. It gives the player the ability to play different stuff. As I said earlier, Overrun, you get to play as the Locust and the COG, but in survival, you only get to play as the COG. So if you were a player that loved Horde mode and Gears 2 and in Gears 3, well, don't worry, you have it in Gears Judgment, but it's just called survival mode, and you have classes and abilities that you can pick from. The only difference is that it's very shorter compared to Horde mode, but they increase the difficulty compared to Horde mode, and I think it does very, very well. Overrun and survival mode are basically examples of taking a game mode that's already been in your game and having an upgraded version of it, and I think it works very, very well. Horde mode, you just get to pick your character and you just spawn in and get to defend against Locust. But now you have classes, abilities that you can use to defend against the Locust. Beast mode, you only get to play as the Locust attacking the COG. But now you get to play as the Locust and the COG in Beast mode. That is just a perfect example on taking something that's already in your game and making it better in the next entry of that same game. I also think TDM is the best it's ever been in a Gears of War game in Gears of War Judgment. I think TDM in this game was heavily inspired by the TDM in Call of Duty. If you guys don't know, TDM in Call of Duty is basically whoever's team gets to 100 kills first wins. That's basically it. You have unlimited lives, but whoever's team gets to 100 kills wins. But the TDM in Gears of War is a little bit different. We do have limited lives. For example, in Gears of War Reloaded, each team has 10 lives, and if they lose those 10 lives, that's it. It's not like Call of Duty where there's a score limit of like 100 kills, 50 kills, 75 kills. No, you have limited lives in Gears of War TDM. And I've always said that Gears of War Judgment has had the best TDM just by the simple fact that you don't have limited lives and all you have to do is just get 50 kills. All you have to do is get 50 kills. Whoever's team gets 50 kills first in the match wins. Unlimited lives, you go out there and you go crazy. It's perfect, because I think the team deathmatch nowadays in Gears of War 4 and in Gears of War 5, it's very, very campy because people like to camp so they won't die and lose lives for their team. But in Gears of War Judgment, you can rush and lose 1,000,000 lives, and it doesn't matter as long as your team gets 50 kills. So those are all the game modes that I love from Gears of War Judgment, and I think those game modes are what carries Gears of War Judgment to be a great game, in my opinion. Again, I think game modes are very important in a versus multiplayer experience, and I think those specific game modes really save Gears Judgment. I feel like if it didn't have those specific game modes and it only had, the casual game modes like King of the Hill, Team Deathmatch, all that stuff, I think it would have been very, very bland and very, very boring. Now, I want to talk about the small things, but at the same time, big things that make Gears of War Judgment very fun to play. So first, I want to talk about the weapons. I think the new weapons that we get in this game are great. My favorite weapon from Gears of War Judgment is literally the sniper rifle breach shot. The breach shot in this game is so freaking good to the point that they had to bring it back for Gears of War 5. It wasn't as good in Gears 5 as it was in Gears Judgment, but they brought it back. Like, if they bring something back from Gears Judgment, you know that people loved it in Gears Judgment. They brought back free fall, they brought back the breach shot, they brought back character skins from Gears Judgment. Like, it was just beautiful. It was just great. The maps as well, the maps for Gears of War Judgment when it comes to multiplayer were great. I remember having maps like Rig, the library map, the street map. I think those maps were beautiful. I think almost all the maps in Gears of War Judgment were, very, very fun to play, very unique. I remember a lot of the maps were, you can press certain buttons on the map to do certain things. They were very, very unique and very, very fun to just play certain game modes on. It literally felt like Call of Duty. Like, certain game modes were great for certain maps and vice versa. It was just perfect. Next, I want to talk about the customization. I think the customization is very, very good in Gears Judgment. It's definitely an upgrade compared to the customization in Gears of War 3, but it's definitely a downgrade compared to the customization in Gears 4. But Gears of War 4 did come out after Gears of War Judgment, so obviously Gears of War 4 is going to have a better customization compared to Gears of War Judgment. But again, I still think Gears of War Judgment had a better customization than Gears 3. This is the first Gears game that gave us, character skins, not just camos for our guns, but camos for our characters. Like, as you can see on screen, we have so many different camos just for our character. It's something that's just very unique for Gears of War Judgment, and it does it very, very well. Obviously Gears 4 upgraded, adding, the color blast skins for your characters, the black steel skins for your characters, and all that stuff. But again, I think for a game like Gears of War Judgment, where a lot of people hate on Gears of War Judgment, I think it had a very, very good customization. It also had supply drops, like a little bit of a version of supply drops, which I thought were very good. You play the game on campaign or versus multiplayer, you complete challenges, you perform well, and you get to, open packs. I think it was very, very good. Like, look at that camo on Barrett on screen. Like, look at that. It's so sick. But yeah, customization in this game was very, very good, and it was very, very surprising. But yeah, that is it for today's video, talking about Gears of War Judgment and why I think Gears of War Judgment is underrated and why I love it. to the point where I think it's better than Gears of War 5 and in Gears of War Reloaded in terms of having a more fun experience. But yeah, let me know in the comments below, what do you guys think? Do you love Gears Judgment? Do you hate it? Is it the worst Gears games in your opinion? Let me know in the comments below. But yeah, if you guys are new here and want to see more Gears of War discussion videos just like this one, or gameplay videos with Gears of War, hit that in the comments below. Let me know what you guys want to see. But yeah, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, turn on those post notifications so you guys whenever miss a video on this channel. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one, and peace out.